Hi everyone. Today we are looking at taking contours from big data, bringing them through Civil3D, which is a georeferenced program, making a 3D surface from those contours, draping an aerial image from near maps, and taking that into 3ds Max to work with. So we will start with DataVic, and all you need to do is type in contours. I'll actually cover this in a separate video because the site is under maintenance at the moment. But if you type in contour, the very first data set you'll get is the VicMap elevation 1 to 5 contours. And we're going to go into the shape file. You're going to go into the shapefile resource. I won't do it now, under maintenance, and I'll cover it in a different video. All right, so I've done that in a previous step, which you can see here. So this is in the object viewer, and you can see just the result of bringing in what I've got there, which is my near map image, and this is my contours. So what I'll do is that I will start again from the start. I am using Civil3D 2023, and I've also installed the country kits. So if I go to new drawing, when I ask for a new drawing, it's going to give me the ANZ design template. I really like the ANZ design template, so I will use that. And what I'll need to do is, if you're unfamiliar with Civil3D, it really is just sort of 4 programs coupled into one. So drafting and annotation is sort of AutoCAD vanilla. If you're familiar with AutoCAD, you can set it to that, and all of these kind of extra aspects will go away. Or I, as I would normally do, I set it to this workspace to Civil3D. Planning and analysis is actually old school AutoCAD map. And by coupling them all in together, it means you can work with them interactively, which is quite useful. So we'll go back to the Civil3D workspace, and what you'll get in that is, apart from properties, we'll get the prospector settings and survey. So I'm just going to pull my properties out of there. I don't need them at the moment. I want to be able to see the prospector, and I want to be able to go to the settings tab here. And in this settings tab, I am going to set my coordinate reference system. Coordinate reference systems are the way bits of map talk to each other, taking into consideration the way the tectonic plates move around. So everything is a little bit, just taking a spherical map and projecting it into flat planes. So all of this can stay the same. We actually just want to set ours to Australia, and I haven't found a shortcut to do this, but we are in the GDA map grid of Australia, zone 55, and the one I'm using at the moment is the GDA, or the Geodetic Datum of Australia 2020 C&D grid. So far that's been fine. The previous one was the 1994, so a lot of older data will still be in 1994, but most programs can reproject for you, so it's sort of okay. All right, so we will apply that to our drawing. Go OK, and then if we use the middle mouse button and zoom right out, we'll get a little red wheel, and you'll see geolocation pops up here, and if you click on that, you can turn your Bing maps on, which is pretty nice, except that you can't use any of the Bing maps without a kind of you can take screen grabs. It's not ideal. it's okay. So that's just showing you the map in the background, and if we zoom into our area of interest, we're here up against the Maribyrnong, so we're looking at a place called Steel Creek Reserve. We are now in a position to bring in our contours that we've downloaded from Vicdata. So what I will do is I've downloaded those as a shapefile. I've downloaded those in the same geographic coordinate system, so MGA55. So if I now type in the command map import, what that will allow me to do is it will allow me to bring in that downloaded shapefile. Now, when you get that, you will of course be looking at a whole stack of folders. You've got to get right down to the last folder. Click on this shapefile, go OK. Now there's a very important step here, don't double click. There's a very important step which involves going to this table, going to the data and saying I want to create object data. That's because Esri or spatial data understands differences in elevation as altitude. So we need to select our altitude field to bring that in with us. We don't need any of those. We only really need the altitude field, so just bring in what we need. And we will go OK. Everything else is fine. We'll just go OK. And you'll see that we've got our contours coming in exactly the right spot. Okay, so one thing that we do need to do though is go back to our home tab and just to demonstrate that the properties are not exactly what we want just yet. So if I click on these, you'll see that their elevation is 0, but if I bring properties out here, it's a bit easier to see. Under miscellaneous, which is at the bottom here, you'll see that we do actually have that line or contour line there should have an altitude of 5 metres. Now, there's different ways around how we do this. The first thing we need to do is save this file as our 2D contour file. AutoCAD in its infinite wisdom is still still requires you to keep 2D drawings separate from 3D drawings. So we'll just make this 2D steel. I've done this a couple of times just to make sure that it works. So we'll do that. And then what you want to do is just make sure that you Civil3D can handle a kind of a strange shaped site, but it is better if you can put in a rectangle that you can do an X trim around. So I would come in here, and I've measured this before, so I know that my rectangle needs to be approximately 600 by 600. So I'm just typing in 600, 600 for the rectangle. I know that that is perfectly, a perfect rectangle. And I would then just want to move this rectangle. I just need move it. Make sure it's not snapping onto any, it won't be snapping onto any 3D points yet because these contours are not 3D. And I'll just move that into my area of interest, but also kind of, trimming off contours that are not going to touch the edge of the site. All right, so that looks fine. I've left it on the same layer for the moment. I don't think it really matters. Now there's a command called xtrim, so EX trim, and you can just select that and then select the outside edges. It'll take everything off. I might take that as well. and just delete these bits and pieces. Yeah. All right, so we're now left with a very lovely rectangle. One of the things that's pretty useful to do as well at this point is to put in a point. So actually we'll do that later. Yeah, we'll do that later. That's fine. So what we'll do now is we need to open a thing called the map workspace in order to make our 3D drawing. So I'm just saving again. And so now I will type in map W space. And we want it to be on. I'll close up the properties for the moment. Now the map workspace allows us to do a bunch of kind of pretty interesting things. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually make a 3D drawing from this 2D drawing. So I can close this 2D drawing. Yes. And I can make myself a new one. I will need to do the same thing, go to my settings and edit my drawing settings and give it the projection again. And just apply that. So I've got another georeferenced drawing. It's got the geolocation on. All right, my map space is open and I need to come down to the tab of the Map Explorer. And what we want to do is we can either drag and drop a drawing into here or you can just go attach. The issue with going through attach is that it's a bit, seems a bit funk. So it is actually better to do it just through drag and drop. Now, it won't map to a OneDrive location, so I've had to put these onto my desktop to do it, which is fine. Where is our drawing? Okay, so I can either go through attach or I can just drag it from my folder. You can see that I'm mapping to the desktop because I've had some issues trying to get it to go to OneDrive. So that's it now mapped, and I probably just need to save this drawing as the 3D version of itself. So we will just go save as. And we will go to the desktop of this computer. And as you can see, I'm saving these as 2D and 3D. And I'm saving them into a folder that says georef. That's important because what we want to avoid is bringing a file with all of its action in a very distant location from the 0 point because 3ds Max is not georeferenced. All right, so now we're going to build a query, which is just here under the map space, Map Explorer again. So we will just go to a current query and we will define a new query and it's going to be a location query. And that's going to be okay to all, and we want it to be a draw. So you could just preview it. So it's just like a But it'll just show you what that might look like, but we actually want it to create a 3D drawing. And what we want to do there is we want to alter some properties. So the properties we're going to alter are the elevation. We're going to alter that elevation through an expression that we set up here that maps that elevation contour data, altitude, to elevation. So just go OK, and then we're going to add, so that's our current query now. So now we can just go OK, and then we can say, execute query. And if we do a zoom extents, you'll see that that has brought in that drawing. It looks exactly the same, except that when we come up here to our properties, that the elevation is now mapped. So I was having a little bit of a struggle with this one, which wasn't coming. Yeah, so it's still saying it's at elevation 0, which is unusual. These ones are at elevation 6, and these ones are at elevation 6. This one is, yeah. So sometimes you'll get stuff that hasn't, because it's cut off like that, it doesn't know what it's supposed to be doing. So in actual fact, where this says 6, the next contour down, all of this is probably 5. And I just know that because I've done this a couple of times already. And, 7, all right. So this one should also be at 7. So just watch out where you've got things that are, where you've got things that are a little bit cut off from their previous data. And that one's 8, which makes sense. So that one also needs to be 8. Now, I believe this has a live link to the previous data, the 2D data, which we don't really need. What we're going to do now is we are going to, Control S. All right, I just had to copy these back out of the other drawing, just these 2 small pieces. Yeah, okay, because we've got an association between queried objects. All right. So what we might do there is just detach that drawing and detach. And then I think we can save. Yeah, okay. So you might just want to detach that in your Map Explorer. Map Explorer does do some funny things sometimes. Okay, so now we are ready to, okay, and it saves fine. Now we're ready to go back and do a surface. So for that, we come back to the prospector. Sometimes I will save this as a new file altogether, but we will just stay in this one today. Now, as with all Civil 3D, it is right-click on the tools and create surface. We can give it a name here, so I always just like to leave the word surf in there and call it surf steel. I'm just going to call it A so that I have it separately from the ones I've got. I leave what's in the counter just because that will give you it'll give you a progressive number for each of your surfaces if you do more than one surface in this file. So we go OK. So we've got surf steel A, and if I open the little cross, we can open the little cross under definition, And in there, we want to define it through contours. So we have contours here, we can add, and all of that can stay as it is. Just user contours is fine. And I will select all of it, but I am going to remove the box. So just type in R, enter, and remove the boundary. And it'll think about it for a bit, and that has now actually made a surface. So if what we might do is just have a look at what the surface style is doing. So in terms of the surface style, we want to see the contour interval. So I've just right-clicked on surface style A, come in here to my properties and gone, okay, the minor interval is 1 and the major interval is 0.5. It's pretty interesting. So I think we want the minor interval to be 0.5. And we want our major interval to be 1 metre, just because that's what we've been working with previously. And now you can see, even though it's sitting on top of the user contours that are white, that you get grey, white, grey, white, grey, white. So the half metre contours will be grey. So that's looking all very tidy. And if I have a look, if I click on it and right click and look in my object viewer, we will see that that is a nice tidy looking surface. You can make triangulated surfaces in 3ds Max directly, but there is a lot of very nice sort of cleaning tools that happen in Civil 3D. Now, there is, of course, a huge error happening across this edge here, which I could fix, but it just looks like one of our contours didn't pick up its elevation. I won't fix it for this particular video. You know the process. You can just fix it. You know, if you get any of those, you'll just need to fix it yourself. Okay. So then the next step is that we want to get a lovely draped material over that. So what we want next is to type in a command called map I insert. And that stands for map image insert. Now, what I did to get my image, and I will cover the geographic side of this in a different video, but what I did to get the images was I logged into Nearmap and I grabbed a georeferenced image. So when I have a georeferenced image, it will bring both a JPEG and what's called a world file. So if you look at these files in here, nope, wrong folder, very sorry. They will arrive to you with a very, very long name here. And I've had to rename them to a single character. And this seems to be the only way we can get Civil 3D to recognize the images properly. So you'll need to rename both the world file and the JPEG that you get. So this one I've named 4. I can just click on it, and if I say open, it's going to use that world file to understand where to place itself, and then we will just go OK. So if I select the edge of this image and type in DR and B for back, we can see that it is beautifully aligned with what we want, but it is not applied yet to our to our surface. So to apply that image to our surface, we need to select the surface and come to our drape image. So very simple command, drape the image. It understands that I want to drape image number 4 and it understands which surface I'm going to drape it over. And so I can just go, okay. So now if I select that, it is already selected, and I do my object viewer and I orbit a bit, you'll see that's where I am with the image applied beautifully. All right, so the next step is to export this surface to 3ds Max and to bring that surface in close to the 0, point. This isn't very clean, but it's okay. So save, and we want to come across to the top ribbon and go to output, select this object, no, not select it, just export to 3ds Max. All right, so the export file type, it's just special to Civil3D's syntax with 3ds Max, so it's a VSP CFG. We don't need anything much. We don't need the working files. We don't need the design. If we had done other things to this site, then we would probably be taking these additional things with us. So I've just unticked all of those, and I'm only going to take Surf Steel A1. I don't seem to be able to take the material that I want with it, so it's just going to come in with its default multi-sub-object material. And filtering, all of that sounds fine. So I can go export, and I will go to my desktop folder. And now I'm going to go into my mesh folder, and I'm going to go into my export from Civil3D, and I am going to make this the A1 version so that we can see how it works. All right, export completed successfully in 0.3 seconds. My next step is to go into 3ds Max. So we'll just open that up now. Of course, that will take a little while. I've had to open it up previously. The tool that we're going to use to get that in, to get that mesh in, is our civil view. So just check your units before you do anything at all. So just in your system units, make sure that you're working in 1:1 meter. And then you can just initialize civil view. So something will jump up, it'll initialize, and then it'll disappear. And then when you go to civil view the next time, you'll have these 3 options, and geometry import is the one you want. So a Civil3D, a VSP 3D file. You'll need to look for that file. Let's see if we can get it from here. That's the one. Be careful, lots of single click, not double click. And we need to tick that box there. Now, a very special thing happens here, which is somewhat annoying, but we do what we can. All right, so when we press apply once, we will get a really important number coming through here. Now, you need to write that number down. So, and you can adopt that global import shift. So just say yes, and just say yes to the feature interpretation style. And you can then close this dialog box. Now what comes through is this checkered material. So what we actually need to do is within Civil View, within the Civil View Explorer, this makes a sort of a list of all the things that you've brought in from other places. So under the surfaces, coming down to the bottom, you can see the draping. If we go into the draping, you can see that the bitmap channel is number 31, and that is really important as well. But we need to tell it where that bitmap is. So if I go back to our mesh folder where I saved that bitmap into and just say open, and it's going to affect my redraw, that's okay. It will now bring that image with its correct draping. Better just check that. Applied to the site. It is pretty interesting because normally in 3ds Max we would handle that with a UVW map. We don't appear to have to do that, so it is it's probably that UVW mapping is hidden somewhere in this kind of process. It's just trying to, I think it's just trying to protect those who are more familiar with Civil 3D than they are with 3ds Max from having to do more complex operations. Okay, so we have that in the correct location, all looking good. I'm pressing T for top and F3 for default shading. Now, the other thing that you can see in Civil View Explorer is the scene settings. Unfortunately, this global import shift, you can't adjust it here. And even if you set up a file and try to specify a global shift before before bringing in your site surface, this only works using the spinner, and it doesn't have decimal degrees or places. So if I want to bring other things in from my 3D file or from my 2D file, I have to actually add to my Civil 3D file. I have to add a point because I want to be able to always go back to make things match up from my Civil file with my Max file. So let's go to point creation tools, and we want to create a manual point. All right, so it'll say, where do you want me to locate this new point? And I can just locate it anywhere, and I can say exchange. 0, 0 is fine, so I think just leave that one blank, that's right, sorry. And now you would think that we could just add our special number into here, 3. And you would think, it looks like it's in around about the right spot. So I've just taken the minuses off because, of course, it's shifting. The numbers that Civil View gave us were a minus. But you do need to come back to your properties, click that point that you've made, and you need to come all the way down to the northings and eastings. Yeah. So when we look at our northings and eastings, you can see that it's not perfectly on that number. So all you need to do is just make sure you actually have the right number. So type it in again, 3, 1, 2. And as annoying as it is that these have to be typed in manually, you could put them, of course, into a text note to speed that up for yourself. 6. Once that's done, that point should make you 2721 should make you a really good exchange moment between, if I wanted to bring in another piece of line work into my drawing, so I might bring in sort of pathways or roads. I can do that using this exchange point. All right, so we'll just flip back to Max now. I can close my civil view. And what we'll do now is just open the material editor so that you can see sort of, two-edged sword that the very large material, multi-sub-object material that comes in with this object creates. Okay, so that is it. We could probably, as we discussed before, material 31 is very special, so we might be able to just bring this down to 31 here. Yep, so that at least drops off some of these materials beyond 31, I think. Yep, so we've got all of these, which you can then get rid of. Just be careful because some of them are attached to others in unfortunate ways. So cleaning these up can be a bit tricky. Let's try that. But you'll see material 31, which is our ground type 4, it has our bitmap on there perfectly. Now, sometimes I do have some problems if I'm trying to clean up more than just material, these upper materials, and it's probably because of this one, this grass noise, which is attached to others. So we'll just have to have a bit of a play with it, but really what we want to bring it down to is, a much simpler material with just three, materials on it. Okay, so I've cleaned that up a little bit, but there are a few linked materials. It's probably worthwhile just leaving those in place. So now if I take this material and just make sure we slide all the way up to the top, select at the top there, and we can start deleting some of these. So it's coming down that pile. I'm going to delete up until 26 so that we are getting a smaller material, just much tidier for working with. All right. So, and then we don't need any railings, so that can be deleted and that can be deleted. And we've got a nice tidy material now. All right. So the last thing I'll show is just about bringing in the, some other line work. Actually, I'll show that in a different video.